Welcome this evening. Thanks for coming. I'm Steve Fay, Canoeing Ireland Development Officer. I'm delighted to host the Safety and Rescue Workshop as part of our winter initiative. This is the third workshop in the Canoeing Ireland WWW Workouts, Workshops and Wellness Series, which is a 7-week online series of sessions which we're hosting. We're fortunate to have a diverse amount of experience in our membership, and the quality of expertise has enabled us to design a rich and varied program for you guys during the evenings. Tonight we're zoning in on all things safety and rescue, and we've got a great panel of experts who will be sharing their knowledge and experience with us. This is a webinar format, so it means that your video and sound as a viewer will be on mute and no one else will be able to see it. However, at the end of it, we're going to have a series of Q&A questions for a short bit, so feel free to put them in the Q&A section down the bottom and we'll get them through. The content will be recorded on the Canoeing Ireland and available on the Canoeing Ireland YouTube series, our channel, at the end of the 7-week series. So we'll have to look back and communicate on. So this evening's theme is safety and rescue. Paddle sports are fun, safe and rewarding sports to take part in, but sometimes they take place in environments where safety and rescue skills form a part of what's needed to be safe and enjoy the experience. And to help us with that, we have 3 instructors from a various amount of backgrounds and disciplines with us this evening. So first off, what we're going to do is we're going to do some introductions, and then we're going to have a short video from Susan Honan, who couldn't be here tonight but is pre-recorded. Then we'll do some questions, and then we'll come back to Susan for another piece that she has, and then we'll do the Q&A towards the end. So let's just start by first introducing some of the instructors. So let people know who you are, where you're from, how long you've been paddling, and maybe what types of paddling that you do. And if maybe we can start with Yanni.
Hey guys, how's it going? I work for Lee Shoffley Education and Training Board. I'm working through Burr Outdoor Education Center. I've been paddling for about 20 years now, running a variety of training courses, both in Ireland and in Europe. And yeah, I'm from Greece, actually, for anybody that doesn't know. And I've been in Ireland for 20 years. I literally came to Ireland and started kayaking. So I've had the pleasure at working a lot with Canoeing Ireland over the years, running all their courses, instructor trainings, skill courses. Yeah, so happy out.
Cool. And you're mainly whitewater. You've done a few other bits and pieces and other disciplines.
Sorry. So I'm kind of whitewater focused. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Cheers. Laura, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Laura Griffin. I'm like Yanni, mainly do a lot of whitewater kayaking. And in recent years, kind of started doing a bit of sea kayaking more personally, not teaching on it. And so I'm kayaking again over 15 years. I started in 2006. When I did the Shackleton course, an outdoor education course, and I've kind of built it from there. So yeah, love personal paddling. I've paddled all around Europe, around the world. Most of my holidays, well, in the past would have included going kayaking abroad, but I just had a baby 9 weeks ago, so that would probably put a halt to all that for a while anyway. And then teaching wise, would mainly have taught in Ireland, instructor training courses as well, and skills courses, and that would have worked with Canoeing Ireland, and then a few different companies around Ireland as well. And then I've worked teaching kayaking in Slovenia and Montenegro as well. So that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Thanks for that. So Craig, do you want to go ahead with that? Excellent.
Well, so hi folks. So like Yanni, I'm from another parish. I can tell by the accent. I was born and bred in South Africa, and I've lived in Ireland for over the last 20 years. So I've led a life of water sports. I'm not a young man. I've been doing water sports my entire life. I've surfed, kite surfed, sailed dinghies, ocean sailed. So I've been on the water my whole life. I've been kayaking since 2007 when I moved here to the Copper Coast and County Waterford. So I own and I run Copper Coast Kayak Adventures. So we're specialists in sea kayaking. We do trips and training based on the Copper Coast and County Waterford. And due to the exposed coast, the very exposed nature of this coastline here, we specialize in rough water sea kayaking, because along here we don't get much shelter, so we need to get people up to a level quite quickly. So we try to specialize and get people up in the rough water.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. And as you can see there, we've got kind of a good range of disciplines and kind of a lot of varied experience, and also some different environments. So what we're going to do it now is also that's Susan Honan, who's also a sea kayaking instructor. She's also done a little bit of a pre-recorded video with myself. So we're just going to roll that now for about 9 minutes or so, and then we'll come back and do some questions with the panel. Okay, so yeah, so you're very welcome. If you just want to give a quick introduction of who you are, where you're from, how long you've been paddling, what kind of paddling you do, and that'd be great.
Thanks, Steve. Well, my name's Sue Honan, and I've been paddling since about 12, 13 years now. And I'm mostly sea kayaking and have dipped my toe in a river once or twice, but I really love the sea. I'm a level 3 sea kayak instructor, and I've gone through, and I'm a BCU level 2 coach, moderate water coach. And I really enjoy coaching and instructing, and the Irish coastline is just a perfect place for that. I'm also part of the Sea Kayak Awards Review Group, SCARG, so I've been involved with, I think Craig is on this call too, and other people who are producing the new Sea Kayak Awards, which I'm really excited about. And I'm looking forward to those getting launched at some stage soon. So mostly I do paddling around the Irish coastline, but I've paddled around Ireland in 2015. So that was a great expedition experience. I did that with Sonia Ewan. And I've also paddled in Norway. I go to Anglesey quite a bit, and I'd like to go to Scotland at some stage as well. But basically, and I'd also love to paddle Iceland. If the body allows it, I'd like to get around Iceland at some stage before I die. But so yeah, so that's me.
Great, cool. Well, definitely a massive amount of experience there, and a good bit of variety. And you probably come across a few situations where, you know, the topic we're talking about, safety and rescue, has come into play. So in terms of sea kayaking, is there something unique or different about sea kayaking when it comes to safety and rescue?
Yeah, there is definitely the safety side of it. Mostly you have to deal with the wind. In a river, for example, you know, you're on a one-way trip, you're on a confined bank. You've got, you can get out, you can just go swim to the side of the river and get yourself out. With a sea kayak, and with sea kayaking, you're in a much more open environment. So the safety side of it is really all about, you know, preventing possible incidents and preparing for things that might go wrong. And sea kayakers do a huge amount of preparation in their trip planning and their weather. They're watching the weather, they're watching the tides, they're watching the currents, they're looking at the moon, what phase of the moon are they at? You know, there's so many different aspects, which is one of the reasons why sea kayaking is such an amazing sport. It's a real planetary sport, because you're looking at the moon, the tides, the sun, the weather, the wind, the global circulation, and how is that happening on a global scale, but then what's it doing on a local scale? So all these local things that are happening, and so you have to take all of that into account when you're planning your trip. So there's a huge amount. Our rescue skills are quite different as well, from what I can gather. I don't have a lot of experience on the river, so I'm just suggesting here, but what I have noticed in my instructing is that when river paddlers come to us, they are very keen to let go of their kayaks, which is something a sea kayaker would never do. They're also have to get to grips with the wind and the swell. And I know you have rapids on a river and you have eddies and that, and we have those on the sea as well. We do have eddies, and we do have, you know, flows going through constricted areas, and we do have tide races. However, once you fall in or something goes wrong, you're still in a very exposed place, and you have to make provision for getting people back in their boat. If you lose your boat, you're really in trouble, because that's your safety, it's your buoyancy, and it's a way of getting you home. You can't just swim to the nearest riverbank. And it's very tiring to have somebody on your back deck and somebody then towing you home. It's a very heavy rescue to do that. You know, it takes a lot of energy, especially if there's conditions going on around you as well. So, you know, hang on to your kayak, you know, have your deck lines. We also have things like radios and personal locator beacons, and we never go out without our phones. You know, we always have to make sure that we have a means of communication in sea kayaking, because and we'd also maybe do a trip report to the Coast Guard. I would do that personally myself if I'm paddling solo, which is another thing, don't go out alone. But if you are in a local area, even as a group, you should always, as good practice, call into the Coast Guard and say, this is who we are, this is how many we are, this is where we're going, this is where we're coming back to, and this is the time we're expected to come home. And I don't really think you do that on a river trip, but that's something that would be second nature to sea kayakers. So there's quite a lot of differences. We also have tidal streams. So you have the water just going one way down the river, one-way trip. You're not really going to paddle back against the river necessarily. Whereas with sea kayakers, we would have to, you know, take a note of which way is the tide flowing, and can we paddle against it? It could be, if it's more than 3 or 4 knots, that's going to be, you know, not really an enjoyable trip. You'd want to be going with that rather than against it. So there's a lot of preparation in looking out for all of those things that you would need to do.
Brilliant. So there's quite a lot in that. In terms of, that's interesting about the giving the Coast Guard a heads up. Is that something that it's kind of part of your planning process? So what were the 2 or 3 main things that you're considering? So you're looking at weather, you're looking at kind of making sure that you're planning with the tides and the weather and things like that. Is there anything else in terms of planning you might do?
Yes, definitely. Prior to going out on the water, you would obviously look at your weather and see, is where you want to go going to be workable in the weather conditions that are there on that chosen time. You would also have a look at, you know, who are you bringing out? How many are you bringing out? What are their capabilities? You would also make sure that, you know, have you got the right equipment with you? Have you got rescue equipment with you? Do the other people have rescue equipment? So, you know, before you go on the water, you'd have a little chat with your group and you'd say, you know, apart from having done your trip plan, how far am I going? How long is it going to take me? You know, where can I get out if things start to go wrong or somebody gets tired? Are there escape points? Where's the crux point? Where's the most difficult place going to be? And can the people that are in this group manage that? You know, you might have a tide race at a headland, or you might have, you know, an upwind paddle, and, you know, are you going to end up towing people? So, you know, you need to plan these things for these things. And then you would need to ask, you know, what are their abilities? And also, we would actually always, in a group, in a club setting anyway, and if there's people that I didn't know, I'd want to know, guys, is there anybody here that's got any physical, not disabilities, but physical issues? Like, can you hear okay? Have you, you know, are you diabetic? Well, I'm not going to ask people, are they diabetic? I would really ask just, you know, if you have any physical issues, let me know, because I need to know if somebody's got shoulder issues like me, what's going to happen, or if somebody has maybe they've had the flu, maybe they're just tired, you know, maybe they're just getting over COVID or something, and this is their first paddle, you know. So you'd always ask, you know, how's everybody today? Are you all well? And if you have any, you know, issues, just let me know privately. So I don't know whether river groups would do that in the same way. I'm sure you probably would, you know. In our trip plan, then we'd also, what are the expected conditions? And we'd always make sure to, you know, when are the conditions due to change? So, you know, what's the weather? Has it been doing? What is it doing now? What's it going to do in the afternoon? And how is that going to affect our trip? So yeah, preparation is really a key thing. We put a lot of effort into that, and that's why we do our training. And that's one of the really interesting things about sea kayaking, because there's so many aspects to it. You know, you got weather, you got tides, you've got a bit of maths, you know, working out timings and stuff like that, and then you've got the human element to it of, you know, the people that you're with, what are their abilities. like any sport, it's a bit psychological. So you're going to have people who are at the high end of they're going to be in their stretch zone, and you're going to have others saying, hey, it's great, you know, and you've got to manage all of that. So you got to be really aware and observant. I think sea kayak, you know, all from my experience, observation of your group is really a key thing. Keep them all in sight, and make sure everybody knows communication, what's going on.
Brilliant. Thanks to Sue for that. Just we're all getting back in here now. So yeah, so we had to pre-record a little bit of that and did cover some of the stuff that we might ask of people, but there's obviously everybody has their own input in some of this as well. So first question, just I think I might go with Laura. You might be muted there. So we have the title of safety and rescue, which has two parts. Is there a difference between the two?
Yeah, definitely. Sue kind of mentioned it, I suppose, talking about what you're saying there about the prevention. So like if we can, I suppose from our training and from our experience and from what we're doing on the river when we get on or the sea, like if you can prevent even having to do any of the rescues, then you're already kind of setting yourself up for a successful day. So if we can look at things before we get on, like, and from our training and what we learn in our safety, like maybe, you know, the weather or the level of the river or the group or whatever, and we can see, oh, this is going to cause an issue, and maybe the river's too high or the group aren't able or whatever, then you're starting off on a positive foot there, that you're looking at, okay, maybe we shouldn't get on, or maybe we shouldn't do this rapid, so that we don't need to do the rescue at all. We're actually kind of putting safety to the forefront, and then there may be no need for the rescues at all. Yeah,
so it's a bit about kind of preparation.
Yeah.
Yanni, would you do what? Is there anything else that you might do in preparation for going paddling?
What I will prepare is so things I'll do before I go out. Like obviously Susan there covered a lot of the stuff, like check the weather, knowing who you're paddling with. Is all your personal gear up to scratch, like safety equipment, and then river choices. Is it suitable for your participants, like, or even your peer, like who are you paddling with? What's the level, you know? And then I also have down, like, how do you feel personally? You know, are you rested? Have you been out drinking all night? You know, is it a good idea to go out paddling then? You know, I'm to be honest with you, I've had times where I was meeting groups and somebody showed up and they were absolutely out partying all night, and I kind of refused them to come out because that was there will be a liability to themselves, but also to the group, you know. Like, so how tired is you? All these, how, like if you're knackered or something and you've been working for a full week, like you kind of need to look about these things. You're not going to be moving around so well, you know. So throughout the day though, Stephen, like, you know, like you're starting off in the morning, you're fresh, you're good, you'll be moving around well. And during later on the day, you might start feeling you're falling offline and stuff. So do you need to alter what you're gonna do? Are you going to run a rapid that's coming up that's be very that could be pushy, you know? So kind of looking after yourself throughout the day is very important as well.
Cool. Yeah, so a bit of the human factors in that. Craig, is there anything else? Is there anything else that Susan has there in terms prior to a trip that's different with sea kayaking, or is there something, or even in other experiences you've had? Is there kind of any kind of other prep you're considering?
Well, I'd echo very much what Yanni's saying there. It's about your looking after yourself first, and I suppose one thing that Sue hasn't called out explicitly is food. Eat. Your especially for sea kayaking, and as Sue said there, you know, it's not so easy for us to pull up on a riverbank. So as Yanni says about your self-care, your self-preparation in the beginning, you need to make sure. So the way I see it, sort of concentric circle. Start with yourself in the middle of that. You need to look after yourself, and for me, that starts inside my belly. So do I have enough food in me for the next while? And then and that would apply in river as well. like you don't want to get into a situation and you're approaching a sugar low. And so especially in those intense situations, you want to have fuel in the belly. And then particularly for sea kayaking, then is remembering, we could be out there, you could be on the water for maybe 4 hours, in one stretch without touching land. So can you get at your next 500 calories? So can you actually access the food that you're going to need?
Yeah, so I think we all have that kind of thing of either not thinking of what we're doing the day before, or very much at the time we were also like, we bring a small amount of food, where realistically, if you're for what you expect, you need to be fueled up, but also for what you don't expect. So in terms of responsibility, you mentioned, Yanni, you mentioned a little bit earlier on about like thinking of everybody yourself, but also of everybody else in the group, and how that can affect whose responsibility really is it for safety on the water?
Well, Stephen, to be honest with you, it depends who you're with. If I'm out with a peer group, everybody should be responsible for themselves, So you should be looking out for yourself, and then see how you feel on the day. If I'm going to run a specific drop or something like that, and you're not feeling up to it, well, maybe you can be the person that set up the rescue and backing me up, and you can walk it today. The feature doesn't go anywhere. We keep saying this to our students, you can come back the next day and run it. So that's definitely as a peer group. But then again, if you're leading a group as an instructor, then I think the responsibility kind of falls with you in the end, So then you're more in charge of looking ahead. What ability is within your group? What is the task you're going to set for them? So you kind of need to watch out. So you're looking after for their safety throughout the day. Yeah.
Yeah. And Laura, would you, about yourself in terms of responsibility, I think Yanni mentioned there about kind of that idea of how you feel and where your head is at in terms of like paddling. How does that affect safety, or how does that affect rescue in general?
Yeah, I think like Yanni's saying there, like your responsibility is for yourself, your own safety, and then obviously when you're instructor, it's for a group. But when you're thinking about yourself, it's like something that I suppose took me a while to learn. Was that it's okay to walk things, or maybe not even to get on the river that day. Like Yanni's saying, if you've had a one night out, maybe today is not the day to be getting on the river. And then it's like it's our hobby. I think sometimes you forget that you're out with a group and everyone may be running a river or running a rapid or something, and you're kind of pushing yourself to run it because everybody else is. You might be really nervous and really scared and kind of feel like, I'm definitely going to swim on this rapid, but everyone else is doing it. And then I think if you just try and take a step back and think, like, I'm out here for fun. I'm here because kayaking is my hobby, and it's a nice thing. I'm supposed to be out enjoying it. And if you realize I'm actually not enjoying this because this rapid is scaring me so much, maybe that's the time when you need to walk, and be okay with yourself for walking it. Just like I say, it's your hobby. It should be fun. And if you do walk something, you don't eat yourself up about it for the whole day. Oh, I should have done that. I should have done that. Like, it won't go anywhere. You can do it again, and just try and enjoy the rest of the river instead of thinking about that one thing that you didn't do.
Yeah, that's a good point. In terms of, well, kind of following on from that, Craig, in terms of people's headspace, and if you're out with other people, or whether you're either a part of a group or leading, how does that kind of atmosphere of those that you paddle with come into effect? The group and the safety of the group, or does it?
Yeah, no, I'm not sure 100% I understand your question, but I'm going to sound like I'm a chef or something, but I'm going to go back to the importance of food, right? So that's something certainly when I'm in the trip leading stuff. It's about you need to keep the energy of the group, and a big part of that is food. So, and especially when you're burning a lot, and so food is part of it, but mood, tiredness. And as Yanni and Laura are talking about the condition, what is the ability of these people? Are they wearing down? you need to ensure that's maintained all the time. And I run this kind of, I have this sort of these simple numbers in my head is, you don't want to run, burn anything over the 80%. So if 100% of your capacity, my personal case, saying if I've got 20% left in the tank, I've really gone too far, okay? Because you need to have that reserve. And why do you need that? Is because you need to, as you said there in response to something that somebody said, Steve, you need to have that little bit of contingency for in case something happens, or it might not necessarily be a bad thing. You might come to a feature, you say, hey, will we go for this? Will we run this, or we shoot that, or whatever it is? Do we have enough fuel in the tank? So for my own personal management, I ensure that I've always got at least 20% in the tank, because I need to be on top of my game. And then for my customers, I want to try and keep them. Now, if any of you listening, I'm sure I've taken it below the 50%, but I try to keep them in the sort of the 50 to 100% range. Because what happens, and we all know it, you get hangry, the fumble, stumbles, mumbles, all that sort of stuff. Once the food goes low, once the energy goes low, be it from calories or be it from adrenaline, all that sort of stuff, things can spiral quite quickly. And it's not really good fun for anyone. So as Laura was talking about, we're here for fun, and fun is the biggest facilitator to learning. So yeah, keeping people's moods, energies up is really important for their own enjoyment in a positive side of things, and to prevent and deal with any negative situations.
Yeah,
Stephen, can I add something?
Yeah.
Just because you asked about the headspace and stuff like that, I think a big catalyst when we have certain accidents on the river, and normally happens in peer groups, is when we get that old peer pressure. Go on, give it a go and stuff like that. And you kind of already made up your mind. You're probably standing there looking at it, you're like, oh, I walked this one. And then somebody's like, the whole group's like, give it, yeah. And then otherwise, the booty beers and all that kind of crap that comes with that kind of thing, So that added pressure, that peer pressure and stuff like that, it's something I would love to see kind of being eradicated from the Irish kind of mentality in kayaking and stuff like that, because I think that puts a lot of pressure on people sometimes. And then when you listen to your gut feeling, it's already telling you, you're probably not feeling it today, So that added pressure sometimes has people trying things that they probably shouldn't be on, or giving it a go at that moment in time, and that then can add to people getting hurt. So that's something to think about, and especially within clubs. We see it a lot in clubs,
So we're a bit lucky, Yanni, and on rivers, that's particularly a big challenge. And we're a bit fortunate in the seas, because you can, if you're facing a rapid in a river, you're either on it or you're not on it, Whereas in the sea, you can judge your distance off. You can get right into a feature, or you can stand off. So we're very fortunate in the sea that it's quite easy for us to facilitate a session with somebody who's charging, just wants to go in and just get turned upside down. We can get them in, and if someone who's not feeling it can sit off and watch and learn. So yeah.
What I'm trying to say, Greg, is that the whole group then starts saying, "Oh, give it a go, give it a go." And you're sitting back there and they're like, putting pressure on it, and then you give it a go. That's when you end up head rotting the whole rock, because you didn't want to do it, but you got the added pressure. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think what Laura, you can come in on this. I think it's kind of like the importance of paddling in a group that's supportive and isn't kind of going to push you beyond what you're comfortable with. Sorry, Laura, you want to talk on that for a sec?
Yeah, definitely. I think as an instructor, it's something I try and when you're a kayaking instructor, and I think you're not just teaching the skills of kayaking, but I think it's kind of like the mental part of kayaking as well. Like, you're trying to teach the group or the students or whatever to be able to make their own decisions. on the river, so that they can decide, oh, actually, you know, I'm not feeling today. Even if everyone is pushing you and that peer pressure is there, that like you're like strong enough yourself, or like, you know, are aware of your own skills, that your skill level is not up to this rapid, or it is, and you know, you'll be able to do it. And then I think it's like, I would also try and encourage the group like to paddle with people who they feel comfortable with. Like, so I mean, if people are putting lots of peer pressure on you, then like that's not a great group to be paddling with, because you know, you're feeling under pressure. You should be paddling with your friends, or people who are, you know, who if you walk or you don't do a rapid, that they don't kind of slag you for it or whatever. It's just like, okay, grand, and just get on with it and paddle on down the river. And I think that's important to teach that to your group, as much as teaching the rescue skills or the kayaking skills as well.
Cool. I think so. We very often that is quite. Yanni's right. There is a lot of that sort of machismo bravado thing that we need to try and cut out. But at the same time, sometimes it is quite well meant. You know, groups trying to encourage someone along. We just need to get it right, because as Laura was talking there, so you can actually do sometimes it could be productive, but sometimes it could be really destructive, especially if someone goes into something. They're not in that headspace. They're a little bit nervous, so they weren't happy to do it. They felt bullied into it. The situation turns negative, and they leave feeling really defeated. So there were very well intended coaxing, let's call it, could actually end up in quite a long-term negative effect for that person. So yeah, I totally echo what you're saying.
I think it also comes with the experience of the instructor. Like when I'm out coaching, I can see somebody's ability and I know certain features. They might be feeling a little bit apprehensive about it, but I can see it's safe enough for them to give it a go, and I'll be there to back them up. So I will encourage them, obviously, in this situation, to give it a go. So I'm not saying now that people should be out there saying to every instructor they're with, no, I'm not giving it a go. You know?
It's not about knowing your group. I think you said at the beginning, and Sue said as well, to know your group and their mental state and what they're capable of as well. So we've kind of looked at a lot of the kind of the things to consider beforehand. We've got a lot of questions answered coming in for later on, so that's great. If anyone wants to put those in. In terms of like, you've thought of everything, you've looked at all the different variables and the things you need to consider beforehand, and you're going to go out and paddle. Is it important to practice? Is it important to practice on kind of easier water as you progress? You know, why do people start at one end and move their way up? Maybe Laura.
This is actually a really personal one for me, in that I pushed myself too hard when I started paddling first. I was paddling with people who were much better than me, and so they were kind of, I suppose, minding me down rivers, and I was paddling on rivers that I shouldn't have been paddling on, but I was kind of managing getting down them. And then like that led to me having a few bad swims because I wasn't able for the rivers. And then I really had to realize, like, myself, I needed to step back a lot to develop my skills, because I was paddling these rivers, but I didn't really have the skills to paddle or the skills to be able to get down them safely. So I stepped it right back to where I felt completely comfortable. And then I was able to practice all these skills. And when you're comfortable, like, you're able to, you know, sit up tall in your kayak and do really nice strokes and everything. It's then when you start getting nervous that you kind of, I would like, you know, you start getting hunched, or your paddle stroke aren't so good because you're not thinking about the paddling. You're just thinking about, oh God, you know, this is really scary. Get me out of here. So if you can like practice then, and, you know, really build up your technique on the easier level that you feel comfortable, then when it comes to the harder things, automatically you're just going to do that. You know, you're going to do the same skills that you were doing when you're on the easier rivers or the easier rapids, and because that's just natural to you then. So like, where you feel comfortable, you need to build up your skills, and then you'll be able to move on and try them out on the harder rapids. And to build it up, don't just jump from kind of easy to really, really hard. Build it up nice and slow and try and work, which can be hard in Ireland as well, because like with river kayaking, the water levels really dictate, you know, it might be dry for ages, and then you haven't paddled in a long time, and then you're like, oh sure, last time I was well able for the Glenmac or the, you know, the Dargle or the Avamore or whatever it is you feel, but you haven't been on a river maybe 6 months, and you think like, oh sure, I did it last time, I'll be able to do it again. So it's important then, if you've had a break, to kind of realize, okay, I need to step back a bit, get my skills, and then hopefully it rains again next week, that I can try these out on a harder river or something like that.
Yeah, so they're kind of the train hard, paddle easy kind of thing. Do all the work on the easier grades, move up. Or you could go out sea kayaking with Craig. He'll find you some tidal races and some rock pour overs and bounce around them. Just to move on, does the
could I add a couple? Could I add one point to that, Stephen? Sorry, you should just echo what Laura's saying there about. So it's about the stimulus, and you want to cut down on the number of stimuli that you have to deal with. So as you're trying to burn the muscle memory, you don't need. So as your focus is on your inside in your body, you don't need all those conditional stimuli on top of you. So, but the other thing where it's really useful to train on gentle water, especially on the sea kayak, is because you can see the effect much more dramatically. So if you're on a sea kayak in 17-foot boat, it can take a long time for what the movement that you're doing to actually have the desired effect on the boat. And if you're on good, still, calm water, you can actually see those effects much more dramatically, rather than them being disguised by rough water around you.
Yeah, true. It's definitely the bigger boats and loads and stuff on it. In terms of like the kind of prevention thing we talked a little bit about as well, in terms of what you can do as a paddler, whether you're as a member of a group, you're paddling with peers, or you're an instructor, what can you do to make things and yourself safer? Or are there things we can do to make ourselves safe on the water, Yanni?
Things we can do before, man. I think we've covered it a couple of times. Again, like checking the weather. Knowing who you're paddling with, like the medical conditions of your group, like your safety equipment. It's not a scratch, like we see it all the time. People go out, even in your own boat, and you're sitting in and you're like, I'm not sitting right. My seat is like too far back or too far front, and my tie rests are not sitting well, and I need to fix that. And then you come home, throw the kayak in the back garden, and then 3 weeks later you're back out again. You're like, geez, I forgot to fix that. And then that can lead into you suddenly not being able to roll right or stuff like that. Or your carabinas, you were out like in the sea and you forgot about them. Now the screw grates are not working anymore. And it's all these little things that we just go, it'd be grand. But then when something unfolds, it's like, damn, if I had that extra carabina that I dropped in the river last week, I would have been able to set up the Z-Rack, or something like that. So I think it's important that when we realize, okay, this is not right, actually deal with it and not just leave it, because that kind of escalates into these issues that we have afterwards. And that's the prevention that we were talking, or Laura was talking about earlier, So set it right from the beginning, then you're laughing.
Yeah, true. What about training? Laura, what kind of training could we do, or Laura and Craig, in terms of might be differences in sea kayak? What kind of training can we do to kind of upskill ourselves to be safe?
Well, it's important. It's important to do your ORSOR courses on the river, like, so you can learn the skills in like a safe kind of controlled environment. And then, but it's important then, like lots of people do a ORSOR course and they're like, tick, done. Like I have my safety kind of done. Like there's so much in those weekend, or a day or 2 days or whatever you do it. It's important then to use those skills as you're going along. So even like when you're out on the river, to practice little parts of that. And if you're in a group and maybe you're the one that always, they're like, sure, the other paddlers are more experienced, they can, they'll do this rescue, or they'll take care of this, I'll just sit here. Like as you you won't get the experience unless you start to help out a bit. So get involved a little bit, at the start, and then kind of use the things that you've learned and try and practice them as you go along. Like throw bag one is a perfect one. Lots of people practice their throw bag skills probably coming up to an assessment because they want to pass the assessment, but then they put the throw bag back in the boat and they don't throw it again. So it's important to practice, practice all the skills. But like a good one, someone told me with the throw bag is leave it in right beside your car. So when you, like in the morning when you're going out, just throw the throw bag, at a fence or a post or something like that. and then when you come back in the evening, it's out recoiled. Fill it in, do a recoil throw, and then you've done 2 throws. Like, you know, it takes about, I don't know, like a minute. Obviously, if you're rushing to work, you don't do it all the time. But if it's there, you might, you know, it's there to practice throwing it.
And your neighbours will never come over to borrow anything again. They'll just think you're nuts. Craig, is there anything in terms of sea kayaking which might be a little bit different in terms of you guys do anything else to upscale and to train?
Yeah, don't know if they're necessarily different, but so yeah, echo what Yanni's saying there, like pair your gear. It's often when I'm zooming, I'm sitting here in the PFD, so a sea kayaker's PFD looks very different to a river kayaker's PFD, and you need to know where everything is, you know. So I sometimes sit here and I'm practicing grabbing the stuff that I need. So getting familiar with my gear, and Laura made the very good point. Get on courses and stuff. But I think what else could we do at home is there's a lot we could be doing on a winter's evening at home. Go on YouTube, just look and learn the stuff that's on YouTube. There's lots of books on sea kayaking. As Sue said, there's a huge body of knowledge that you need in sea kayaking. So very often that knowledge and sea knowledge is actually far more important than any paddling skill at sea. So keep learning. You know, read your books, watch your videos, and then, you know, to Laura's point there is use the skills. Don't just do your RSR and say job done. Be it river, be it sea, some of the best fun you can have is simulating rescues. Get out and just practice them, you know. Another thing is you can work on your fitness. Your personal strength, your personal flexibility, your personal fitness is a huge foundation, a huge pillar to your enjoyment, you know, your skills, your ability, and particularly your safety on the water. So you know, if you go out there and you're a bit out of shape, you know, we've been through Christmas or whatever, haven't paddled for a few weeks or whatever, and you go out and just try and hit a feature straight off and try and hit it hard, you could injure yourself. So to try and keep your physical condition on as high as you can the whole time. So there's a huge amount that we can do at home in preparation for being out there. And so personal as a philosophy of mine is that I see sea kayaking as it's more than a sport, it's a lifestyle. And you can apply that to everything, golf or river kayaking, everything. But we should see is, you know, bring that hobby and that passion back into our lives. It drives a wonderful way of life. It can motivate you to get down and do your Pilates, eat right, don't drink a lot, drink lots of water and all that, because it's going to pay off on your time on the water, and especially for us old sea kayakers. I don't know why it is, but it seems to be a lot of old folks in sea kayaking. Longevity. You know, you can be paddling into your 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it can be lots of options as well in terms of different types of paddle sports as well. So you can vary it. Cool. In terms of the kind of getting onto the rescue side of things, we talked a little bit about just in terms of structures and models that we use in state. This is where we get to mnemonic bingo, where you've got all these different letters that mean different things. Does anyone, are there different ones that we use? Does anyone know are very easy to remember kind of things that we use sometimes in terms of rescue or safety on the water? Maybe Yanni.
Yeah, cool. So like, obviously we have different models that we use. It's more like it's good little small words that we can kind of then spell out the different things. So like maybe STIG will be one, yeah? So like self, team, individual, and gear. So if you have that on your mind, like, so obviously you need to be safe. You know, you need to look after yourself. After that comes your team. Make sure that they're okay. And then we're approaching the rescue and saving the individual that's in trouble and in the water, whatever. And then lastly, gear. We can always replace that, you know. Then another one we might be using is clap. So when we group and stuff like that, so we kind of establish that from the beginning, kind of the communication. What signals are we going to use on the river today? Many times we meet up with people in the car park and they're like, oh, you want to go for a paddle? And they have all sorts of different signals. So maybe just take a minute and say, what are we going to use today, guys? And somebody's like, oh, hole, and this is tree or whatever. It's all sorts of, some of them are very, very creative and they're fun. And you're like, okay, we'll use that today, but at least we're all on the same page. Then line of sight, we need to be able to kind of be able to see a whole group, or maybe somebody sitting in the eddy, somebody goes around the corner, and we have this line of sight that we create that we can pass the signals back to each other and stuff, make sure everybody's good. Then avoidance, like we see hazards, stuff like that, we kind of need to talk about those, and positioning. So for me as an instructor, that's one of the key elements, you know what I mean? Where is one of my team members going to, they might get a knock, might fall over. Am I sitting right in this eddy? Is this the best place I can be in to get quickly into a rescue if I need to be? You know, see, sometimes we're having fun and we drop too far down the rapid and then something escalates or something happens further up and you can't paddle back up to them, you know? So then you're like, oh no, I shouldn't, I'm completely wrong here. Like I need to be up. So don't rush it, take your time, you know? So that'll be some. I don't know if the guys want to throw some in. We have dice as well. Again, when we are with the groups or stuff like that, so defining the area that we're going to be operating in, identifying the hazards again, like what do we have here, you know, what is the hazards, where we're going to position ourselves, then again, the communication, and then exit or emergency, that will stand for, you know. We use that a lot with groups, I would say, dice, yeah. So that's it.
I had one thing we brought in, as Sue was saying, Sue and I served together when we were revising the Sea Kayak Awards for Canoeing Ireland. And we brought in, must give huge credit to Shane McGilligan over in Roundstone. He brought this to us. Is we now talk about dice T. So it's dice when we add the letter T on the end of it. And so it's, as Yanni said there, you've got to define the area, identify the hazards, you set up your comms, agree your comms, egress, exit, emergency. And then T is tactic. So what's the tactic for the next stretch? And so we talk about a big dice T and a small dice T. So you can be applying that at the start of a trip. So this is something that we're going to be rolling out. This is a great thing for trip leaders, a mnemonic for them to be remembering when they're doing a briefing. You run through those DICE, and at the end, tactics, and that can apply to the entire trip. You can say, you know, we're going to use a buddy system or whatever. But then you can use it again in what we call the small dice T, is if you say we're going to run this section. So to use the analogy of the rivers, we're going to run this section, and this is the tactics we're going to set up, and we're going to meet at the end. So T is something we're adding onto dice, and it stands for tactics. What's the tactics for this next little bit of our trip?
Cool.
That's cool. That's a really cool thing to add on. Just to let everybody know, we've got a little bit of more video from Susan to come up, and then we're going to go with the Q&A. So probably, depending on how long we spend on the Q&As, we probably about another 20, 25, well, sorry, about maybe 30 minutes to 35 minutes left. So just letting people know how long we're on for. So just to, we'll probably go to Susan's video, and then we'll come back. There's a few other little bits and pieces which we might tie up a few bits that we've been talking about. Sue will go over a little bit of that now, so we're just going to go to Susan's video if you wanted to roll that there. Thanks. So yeah, there's a lot of as we said, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of preparation, there's a lot of attention to detail, almost like prevention in terms of like making sure that you're doing that kind of risk assessment beforehand. In terms of rescues, are there anything particular? Like that's prevention, and then there's cure. So if something does, what are the things that will happen that you'll see on the sea that might be unusual? You did mention something about getting back into your boat or staying with your boat. So would be something that's different in terms of rescue?
Well, like on the river, we have different rescue techniques, but with sea kayakers, you capsize. The difference is, can you get yourself back in your boat, or do you need someone to help you get back in your boat? Okay. So, you tend to find that the more novice paddlers, they definitely need help. And, sea kayakers are a very helpful bunch. We need each other on the water. We can, when I'm in a group and somebody just goes off and I'm like, they're not looking back at me. What happens if I fall in and they're not looking behind me? We all need to look out for each other over a long time. So on the rescue techniques, we put a lot of effort into self-rescue. Can you get yourself back in your boat? Is that by the cowboy rescue, or is it by a re-entry and roll? So we do like you would do pool training. Everybody pool trains at some stage over the year, whether you're a river or a sea paddler or any other paddler. Self-rescue is a big thing. We also have things like gullies and rock crevices and rocky channels. So there are protocols for doing rescues. If somebody's in a gully and you're thinking, geez, I'm not sure I want to go in there and rescue that person, you've got your STIG mnemonics, look after yourself first, then your team, then your individual, and all your gear. So there is training that we do to practice those scenarios. But the key thing is if somebody's in a narrow area and is looking a bit hairy, it's like, can you swim yourself out of there? Clip yourself onto your kayak and swim yourself out of there as far as you can, and then we'll get you. So, but then you've got to be very quick and observant and organized with it as well, because they may not be able to swim themselves out of there. So things like unconscious casualty rescues, somebody's maybe dislocated a shoulder or broken something, what do you do? So we do a lot of training, we do a lot of first aid. A lot of paddlers would have the remote emergency care, would really recommend a remote emergency care courses or to work on those. And practice the scenarios that might happen.
Brilliant. So then, you've covered quite a lot, and a lot of the questions I even had there, you've already gone into, like, for example, the similarities in terms of the models and methods that we use, like STIG and things like that, across the board. They're very similar in terms of it's still a kind of a safety and concern in terms of when you're out there. In terms of responsibility, you said that the sea kayakers very kind of they take care of each other. Where do you think the responsibility lies when you're out paddling with groups for safety?
I think there's two aspects to that, Steve. I think there's your personal responsibility to yourself. If you, well, maybe more than two. Am I able to do this paddle? Is my fitness high enough? Am I going out expecting for someone to look after me? That adds a whole different dynamic. And you need to be able, the group leader, if there is a leader, or your peer group needs to be able to know, what is going to happen if something does happen. Who's going to look after you or me in that case, if I need looking after. So you've got, personal responsibility is, am I fit enough? Do I have the skills to go out on this trip? Have I got the training? Should I be putting myself and the other people I'm with in this position in the first place? So you have that personal level of responsibility. And then you have to decide, well, am I going out in a peer group or a lead group? And, if it's a peer group, then we're all, in my view, we're all looking out for each other. And the group is responsible for everybody's responsible for themselves, but we trust each other to, get us out of trouble if we need to. And that's where not knowing who you paddle with, does everybody have a tow rope? If somebody hasn't got a tow rope, well, they're no good in a rescue where you need a tow. So it does boil down to, is it a peer, or then is it a lead group? And if it's a lead group, then your level of responsibility goes up much higher. You're responsible for the group, and you're responsible for giving them a good time and making sure that everybody goes out and that the same number of people come back and that everybody's safe. and that if stuff happens, that you're able to manage it and that you can delegate to other people if needed. So, you know, the responsibility, it really depends, doesn't it, on the type of paddling that you do. And I think a lot of clubs and groups go out, you know, I've heard people say, oh, it's different when you lead a trip. It's not quite the same trip for you if you're leading as if you're going out in a peer group, because you're not as observant in a peer group is what I've seen. Everybody's just paddling along, and yeah, if stuff happens, you get together. But on a led group, if you're the leader, your mind is much more focused, and your responsibility is to keep people safe and, well, to make sure that, you know, you've done as much as possible to prevent anything happening, and that you haven't been negligent in any way for the safety of that group. And that is a whole minefield then, isn't it? You know.
True. Again, you've covered a huge amount of what we had, both in questions, and some of these questions that you've already covered, I'll be asking some of the other groups as well in the live webinar. One last thing, in terms of, if you kind of had to think back, you've covered a huge amount. Are there maybe three tips that you could say if you're recommending somebody who's starting this journey or kind of wanting to know more, that you kind of give, that either can be generally for rescue or specific to sea kayaking? What would they be?
I would say get some training. Get some training from a qualified instructor or coach or provider. There's plenty out there. And you know, read as much as you can, ask around as much as you can, join a club if there's one available to you. Work on your personal fitness, build up your equipment slowly, work on your clothing. You know, boats are expensive, kit is expensive. If you're properly dressed for the water, you know, you see people going out and they're in a shorts and a t-shirt in the summer, and you're thinking, you know, and yeah, but if you're in the water, it's a lot colder, especially wintertime. Paddling in Ireland is, you know, you're not going to go out there without the proper clothing. Get a buoyancy aid, you know, start with the basics, buoyancy aid, dry, a wetsuit, decent wetsuit, booties, helmet, you know, and then maybe build up to a dry suit, because that really opens up a lot more conditions and weather conditions. You have to remember, in Ireland, like once the temperature is 15 degrees or lower, it's officially cold water paddling. So for the majority of our time in Ireland, we are cold water paddling, and that means that, you know, we have to be dressed properly. So tips: get training, get some basic equipment, start with your fundamentals, buoyancy aid, clothing, and then build up as you go out with a club and then be curious. Just get out there and expose yourself to different conditions, learn about the weather, learn about the tides, learn about the phases of the moon. It's fascinating stuff, and yeah, go for it. Have a great time.
Brilliant. So thanks very much for that, and thanks for all your input. And I want to go sea kayaking now.
I know. Thank you so much, and good luck with the rest of the seminar. Thank you.
Brilliant. So we're just coming back there. First of all, thanks to Sue for recording that earlier on in the week. I know there's a little bit of double answering on some things, but it's good to get a few people's input in. So a lot of what we talked about tonight, there seems to be kind of like you've got the prior assessment of things, the risk assessment of your conditions, your people, where you're going, the mental state of your paddlers, and then you have the kind of more dynamic on the water kind of assessment of how things are, or people running drops, or conditions and your landing options and things like that in sea kayaking. In terms of that risk assessment, it seems that also you need to have a good resource judgment. Where do you feel that paddlers get that judgment? I know we've talked about some of it before, but maybe Craig, where do you think people build up that judgment in a good way?
The best teacher of all is, of course, experience, water time. But there's a tip that I like to give people. I think how you can accelerate that a bit is, Sue was talking about the sea. I spoke about the body of knowledge that you have, and a big part of that is learning what the sea is going to be like in different conditions, different winds, tides, seasons, that kind of stuff. So that's one of the biggest differences between the river and the sea is you know, the sea just can change in minutes. And so the predictability, we don't have that predictability with the river. I mean, you can have, you know, mental conditions, but you can look at a rapid and it's gonna stay that way for you know, a long period of time. The sea, it can change very, very quickly. You know, you've got waves coming. You know, you can get a set come through. So that sea knowledge is extremely useful and so my tip for people on how you can speed up your learning on that is look at the forecast. So go on your Winguru or wherever you get your forecast, and when you're there, start to build up, you know, mental pictures and build up your knowledge. Say, okay, so this is the sea in a force 5, and so you can start piecing that together, so that when in the future, when you look at your forecast and say, oh, it's going to be blowing a force 5 southwest, you can draw on previous experience of what it looked like. So you can, and you know, look back. That way you can build a memory bank of what conditions are like.
Yeah, so it kind of gives you a little bit of judgment in terms of what things are gonna look like. In terms, Laura, in terms of judgment on kind of river stuff, you did mention earlier on about like kind of practicing hard on the easier grades. Is there anything else in terms of judgment that it can help to build it in a safe manner?
I think probably a lot of us do it after we get off the river. If there has been something that happened, we often talk about it, you discuss it. But it's, I suppose, discussing it and learning from, like, you know, oh, did we do it the right way, or could we have done something different, or could we have done it faster, or, you know, and it's that discussion afterwards sometimes is where nearly more learning takes place, because you realize, oh, what we did, you know, maybe we could have done it this way or another way, or there's other people's views then come in when you've had maybe a bit of time to think about what happened. You know, you maybe would have dealt with it differently or better. And so it's taking that bit, and then if, you know, if something similar happens again, using the experience that you had and the discussion and trying the rescue or whatever is needed.
Cool, brilliant. And
finally, I would add to that as well, Stephen, if I can.
Yeah.
I would just say that it's important, like within clubs or as instructors, that we allow our participants as well the opportunity to come up and look at things for themselves. We don't just say, go down here, you know what I mean? Because we have the experience, we know it's fine. Allowing them the initiative to come up, look at themselves, and then slowly, that's how people build that knowledge of running rapids or drops or whatever it is, you know? And within the clubs, the same. Like, I think we see a lot of people just are very happy to sit at the back and just follow the line of somebody else that's used to doing that. And that is not really the way of trying to get that knowledge. So getting up the front a little bit yourself. And again, it can be like Laura said, on easier rivers. It doesn't need to be on a river that you push. Come back to something easy, and then now you can step it up and get up the front, look for yourself, give the rest of the group the line. You will be the one that's in charge of it, you know? And I think that's how you get the knowledge and the experience for sure.
Perfect, deadly. So thanks for that. What we're going to do is we are going to move on to some Q&As or some doozies. We're not going to get to all of them. And then we'll come back to you for a kind of few final thoughts on that. So first off, we're going to look at, let me see. We'll start with one that's kind of topical. It says, Laura said you had a baby recently. Congratulations. Is it safe to paddle while pregnant? I think the answer to that is probably yes, but maybe in terms of like how your experience was with that and up to what point.
Yeah, I have an article half written about this, but I haven't finished yet. So, eventually I'll get done. I paddled. I had the baby in November, and I paddled up until September. Originally, when I like at the start in early pregnancy, I paddled kind of normally as I always would have, because I felt like it was safe, and I just did. I spoke to the doctor originally, like at the start, and she just said, like, just, you know, don't you can't really take a fall or whatever. So I suppose on the bank, I was very careful when I was walking around. And that was something I didn't really think of beforehand, but I was like, oh, like, you know, if you slip and fall on the bank quite a bit, it doesn't usually make a difference. But like, I was really careful with that, and I made sure I had good boot, you know, kind of good river shoes and that kind of stuff. And then on the river, like we went to France to the Alps last summer, and I paddled in the Alps. But I just made sure that I was comfortable on the rivers that I was paddling. So like we kind of took it a bit easier than I usually would have. And some rapids that when before I went out, I was worried, would I know what to paddle and what not to paddle? Or like, how would I know if I push myself too much or not? But as soon as I got over there, I just realized, like, rivers, kind of read and run stuff I was happy on for myself. And then if we had to get out and look at a rapid, most of those rapids I walked just out of kind of just to be that little bit more cautious. And then afterwards, like I had said earlier, I was kind of like, oh, I should have ran that rapid, I would have been fine. But like the rapids will all be there, so I can go back to France again. So yeah, and then like towards the end, or like kind of September time, I was just paddling kind of easier rivers where I felt a bit more comfortable. And the spray deck was a big thing. I had to get a bigger spray deck because it wouldn't fit around me. So
you also did a big mad via ferrata though.
Oh yeah, but you're tied in, so it's okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Cool. So we've got a couple of ones here. Some of them are going to be quite big questions, so just be aware we'll try to be as brief as possible. One here is what steps should you take when safety on the bank fails? And I presume they're talking about on a river situation here. I presume that who wants to answer that one?
Well, if it was me,
they have rope rescue on the bank.
Yeah. Well, it all depends. All these situations, it all depends all the time, you know. But we would always, if I was on my own with a group and we were going to set up rescue on the bank, I would have my kayak ready in a really suitable location that I can jump in my kayak and then continue the rescue from the water. And if we have the luxury of being two, happy days. Normally one instructor is on the water already waiting. The other might be dealing with whatever system you set up for the rescue, using ropes or whatever. So you have that backup constantly. Yes.
Yeah, so it's about you can have static or dynamic rescue, I think. And the dynamic is someone in a boat if you have that. That'd be kind of cool. Okay. Yeah. Let me see. Some good as here. Snaplink carabiners, yes or no? And I think we had this discussion. I think it was last weekend. I think it was. Who wants to go with that one?
I can go again.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your view, Yanni, and then I can tell you mine.
Yeah, so like they have their usages. Snappling. Obviously, you can clip a carabiner. I carry one, but I have it inside my buoyancy. I don't have it on my cow's tail because if I'm going to do a tether rescue, I like to obviously close it. I don't really clip paddles on my cow's tail in the water. So it's more literally just to feed over a paddle if I need to clip a paddle and throw it in to the river for somebody. It could be an undercut, something like that. That's where I would use it normally. But it lives inside in my buoyancy. Screw gates are definitely safer when you can screw them up and close them and stuff like that. So I mainly use those. But there is times that we will like maybe to use a snappling. That's all.
Yeah, Craig?
Yeah, I think it's kind of echo with Yanni. There's a sort of a place for everything. I don't think there's a black and white on it. Just my personal way of operating is I do a count. I probably have a dozen carabiners, and I'm a sea kayaker, you know. But yeah, I have a snap link to a kind of a leash thing that I can get rid of. And I've got, so I'm very nervous about getting pinned onto something, getting my PFD pinned onto something. And the sea kayaks, there's a lot of ropes and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that you can end up hooked onto. I heard a story that still gives me chills. One time, many years ago, a fella up in Dublin was telling me how he put his rope on his back deck, and he had there's a clipgate carabiner. Did a roll and ended up pinning himself to his back deck upside down underwater. So I've got inside my PFD, I've got a lot of these Wetman, Kraken things, but as much as possible, I try and keep them safe. And I do have 2 in my setup, but they're on a leash that's not actually tethered to something. It's only held under my PFD. I can get rid of that. The stuff that's tethered to me, I use screw gates.
Yeah. So, Laura, do you have any variations on that, or same as the guys?
I teach on flat water a lot, like on the lake, on lakes and stuff, and as for with kids for games and stuff like that. The screw gate or the clip gate, the snap gate carabiners are great to collect a whole load of paddles if you are doing a raft game, and all the kids' paddles are floating away everywhere. I use it often with a sling, like to collect them all together, but that's just like it's a handy thing. Again, they have a place.
Yeah, they can be. They're really handy. My own personal one is just for I clip it onto a sling in my buoyancy side to tow, but put my arm through the sling. But generally, I think the lads was like anything you don't want to come open, snap gate. Anything you don't mind, like then anything you want to come out of screw gate. Anything that you're okay for it to come open, then snap gate. And then if you are keeping your snap gate anywhere, it's in a pocket where it can't accidentally clip, like Craig said. It's a way out of the way. Cool. Let me see. Should clubs strongly use the word force members to practice rescues on a regular basis? I presume they probably means scheduling it in and making it like something that you're encouraged to go to. In my experience, many paddlers learn basic extra as part of their level 2 training, but then don't not necessarily practice again until they go on to do a training. So should clubs have kind of regular training, or should you get people go to regular training if they have the ability, or what do you guys think?
I would say absolutely. I would very much encourage it, and this is something that kind of surprises me. I said it earlier that it's some of the best fun you can have is doing rescues training, and it's something that always surprises me is people's aversion to getting out of the boat and into the water and doing rescues. So that's something I very strongly encourage, and I'll talk a little bit about that later when we wrap up. But this is a water sport, so I would be strongly supportive of clubs encouraging and supporting ongoing rescue training, and that is one thing I've seen that we all know about skill fade, and it's a remarkable one I've noticed is you do what we used to call the level 2, the 2-day course. By the Sunday night they are just busting out the X rescues, T rescues, crushing them. Let them come back 1 week later. They've forgotten it. Let them come back a month later. It's gone altogether. And then these people are trajectorying towards level 3. It needs to be constantly refreshed. So in my view, I would be strongly supportive of clubs encouraging people to do regular rescue training.
Cool. Okay. There's 2 ones who are very similar here. We might do a rapid fire round on this one. So off the top of your head there for river, must have safety equipment for a group trip on a river. They did ask for C as well. We'll get to that. So fire away there. Laura, you pick 3, and then Yanni, you pick 3 if we have 6. Things you bring for a group.
First aid kit, sling, throw.
Okay, cool. Yanni, go.
Group shelter, split paddles, and jellies.
Craig, it's almost the same, I'd say, apart from maybe a couple of technical pieces. But what else do you?
I'd say Yanni's hit my top 3 there. Number 1 is spare paddle, group shelter, and food.
Jelly. Lots of jellies. It's amazing how it cheers people up. Then you guys would have like VHF radios and things like that, but they're almost part of prevention as well as cure. So also for different times of year, you might bring you know, one season you might bring lots of liquids for people. Another season might be warm liquids, things like that. So, anything else you might bring? Anything? Have you ever brought anything strange that you normally wouldn't bring if you had to bring it because you're in a different country?
Well, we'll bring repair kits. If I'm going away somewhere, I will bring a good repair kit. I even have a small little torch that I plastic weld in boats. I remember one year in Italy, I must have plastic welded 7, 8 kayaks while on the trip. So it came in really handy. Yeah.
Brilliant. Cool.
Sun cream, maybe, is that sun cream? Does that count as an exotic commodity?
Sunscreen and after sun when you're paddling off somewhere warm and hot. Irish people aren't used to that. We're not used to that. So one last one. Within a group out peer paddling, should you have one person who assumes the leadership role within the group and then the others abiding by the leader's safety decisions? And it goes on a little bit. So in terms, and if so, things go wrong, where does responsibility then lie? It's kind of strange. It's kind of a peer paddling question. If there are peer paddling.
If you are peer paddling, is you assume that you're all peers. That's what the whole word is, the peer paddling. So I don't think that one person will say, okay, guys, today I'm the leader. If something goes wrong, it's my mistake. You know, I don't think so. Like, you should all be looking out for each other, but also yourself. And I think that's the whole point about peer paddling, is that you're all there together. Nobody's really in charge. You didn't pay them or something like that. So I don't think you can say, well, Yanni was up the front most of the time, so he'll take the blame. You know what I mean? I would recommend as well that you kind of swap around throughout the day to give everybody a chance to be up the front. It is good fun to pick the lines and do those risk assessment, dynamic risk assessments along the way and stuff, you know? So I don't know in the court if that will stand, or if somebody was up the front most of the time today, that they suddenly get the blame, you know? But yeah, especially if it's a peer group.
I think also, like, the peer group that I paddle with a lot, like, we paddle with each other all the time. So you kind of, there's just certain roles you kind of, I don't know, people are slightly better at or whatever. So you kind of, I don't know, fall into those maybe a little if it's a group of friends and you're used to paddling with each other. But there's no one person really in charge. It might be someone is slightly better at, you know, like, you know, a bigger rapid or something. They usually go first because they have maybe that slightly bit braver or whatever. But there's no one person that does just, you know, that is in charge.
Brilliant. So I think there was a few other ones, but not sure if we're going to have too much time, or we're coming up on about an hour and a half. So how often had you to use spare paddles? I'd say Craig's definition of needing spare paddles is a bit more significant than river paddling, but I've definitely used them a few times. Craig, spare paddles are essential in sea kayaking.
Absolutely. So we're setting up a club here, and I've actually set a ratio in that, actually stipulated the number of paddles that must be within the group. We have. And I'm sure in the river you lose them a lot. They sweep away. We break them on the sea a bit.
Yeah, we sometimes get them back, but not always.
Stephen, something I want to add to that question, which I've experienced, is like, as kayakers, eventually we get all our fancy gear together, and we like to have our own personal paddle, to be like €300 worn in carbon or whatever, really fancy paddle. And then I thought it's not really on the split paddles, and people buy these €50 in little when they come in. And I've been in Norway before with groups, and you paddle in class 4 or 5, and suddenly somebody does break a paddle or lose one. They're like, oh, yeah, I'll take out my split paddles and these really cheap plastic 90 degrees. And you're like, best of luck now paddling the rest of the river. Do you know what I mean? So I think people really need to focus on, or within a club or something. And I know it's a lot of money, like they are expensive, really good set of split paddles. But if you, I would say maybe keep the money, save the money a little bit longer, and do get yourself a good set of splits. So when you take them out, you don't go in from the Ferrari to the Fiat Stilo. You know what I mean? So go have a similar paddle, you know? Mm.
And if there's a reason that you've had to resort to a spare, the things are probably getting a bit hairy. So you don't want your cheap and cheerful.
If you've broken a paddle,
Yes.
it's probably been a swim or something along the way. So you want that person to have the best chances. So just a final bit on this. If you could give people three main safety or rescue tips, what would they be? Laura.
So the three, I think, first one is communication. So it's really important beforehand to have communicated well, like that. So then maybe you are preempting that you don't even need to do the rescue in the first place. Or if you do have to do a rescue, that you've communicated with the groups where everyone knows what's happening, that you don't often, like sometimes it's where communication breaks down, someone goes off and they might get lost up the riverbank or you don't know where everybody is. So communication is really, really important to maybe stop something bad from happening in the first place, or when it does happen, that you know where everyone is and everyone is clear as to what's happening. And the second thing, like I said earlier, that it's okay to walk a rapid or even not get on the river that day if you're just not feeling it. It's our hobby. It's supposed to be fun. So if you're not enjoying it or you're feeling so pressured to do a rapid, then that's not why you kayak, you know. So it's okay to walk. And my third thing then is, I suppose, leads on to that, is like the peer group that you're paddling with. So whether it's a group like in a club or you're just your friends that you're paddling, that again, it's a fun thing that you are paddling with each other because you trust each other, you can rely on each other, and there's no one just in charge, and you're there again because it's your hobby and you're enjoying it. It's not someone who's maybe like pushing you to do something that you don't want to do or annoying you on the river or whatever. They all feel safe together and that it's fun and enjoyable.
Cool. Brilliant.
So I suppose my communication,
sorry.
It's okay to walk and your peer paddlers.
Supportive environment. Brilliant. Cool. Craig, your three?
Okay. Well, number one might not surprise anyone. It's eat. So if you're hungry, you're not going to be much good. So the second one is almost my first one, is accept that incidents will happen. So I'd like to remind people that kayaking is an adventure sport. Kayaking is a water sport. You will fall in, you will swim, and I encourage people to accept that and think how you think about it. So a capsize or a wet exit or a swim is not a failure. So I'd like people to not think that way. A capsize or wet exit or swim is not a failure. It's part of the fun. It's part of the learning. So accept that incidents will happen. But part of that is call for help when you need it. Sue said in sea kayaking, that's part of the thing. We've got this pack mentality. Same I've seen it on the rivers. Call for help when you need it. And we have, there's various, we haven't gone too much into detail of it, but the rescue starts with self, then your buddy, then your team, then your external. There's various layers. Call it fast. When you need it, call it fast. And then the third thing is, and related to that, is the more self-reliant you are, the better. So prepare yourself, prepare your gear. And we spoke a lot about prevention and preparation. So the more self-reliant you are, the less likely you are to drag others into a negative situation. You're less likely to end up on one yourself. And on the positive side, you're more useful in helping to resolve a negative situation. So quick recap on the three. Number one, eat, keep the fuel in the belly. Number two, accept that incidents will happen, and don't treat swims as failures. Call for the help when you need it. And then finally, try and aim to be more and more self-reliant. The more self-reliant you are, the better it is for everyone.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Craig. Yanni, your last three?
Okay, last one and fast. Listen to your gut feeling, okay? We have this mechanism built in us, normally tells our brain if it's gonna be stupid or okay. So listen to that. Then don't let peer pressure sway your choices. And then lastly, that this is one for all the crazy kids out there. Don't run rapids and drops blind, okay? Even if it's your local river, guys, and you're like, oh, I've run it 20 times. That could be a tree there. That could be anything. Just have a quick little look. You can do it from your boat most of the times, catch an eddy, then we're good to go. That's it. And last one, I know it's 3, 4, practice rescue, practice, practice, practice. That's it.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for that, Yanni. And thanks for all the panelists, actually. Thank you for coming and engaging. We could talk about this for quite a long time. It's a huge, big subject, and it's really hard to cover even a small amount of it in an hour and a half. There are courses out there. There is training out there. There's skilled instructors out there. If you're looking to build up that knowledge and that experience in a safe way with somebody else looking over your shoulder and helping you out, that's probably one of the best ways to do it. We have plenty more workshops on the way that you can sign up to right up until the 1st of March. Tomorrow is creating and growing a junior section or academy in your club or anywhere else. Wednesday is core paddle sports, core for paddle sports paddlers. So a bit of fitness and exercise with Dave McClure, one of our freestyle athletes. And then tomorrow we'll be releasing the full 2 weeks of workshops. For instructors, also on Wednesday, we're going to be releasing tickets for the Instructor Symposium in Garton on the 4th and 5th of March. And if you have any questions about tonight, you feel free to email myself. I can get help or questions and answers for people at development@canoe.ie. And any questions about the series, you can contact Hannah at canoe.ie. And as mentioned at the beginning of the content, everything will be available to watch back again, all the craziness on Canoeing Ireland's YouTube channel at the end of the series. So with that, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming along, Laura, Craig and Yanni, and hopefully see you guys all out in the water.